The wind howled a frigid, merciless tune, a stark contrast to the oppressive summer heat that had defined the town of Millhaven for decades. Sarah pulled her worn trench coat tighter, the damp chill seeping into her bones as she stood on the sidewalk overlooking the Millhaven Bridge. It was an old structure, a monument to a time when this small Rust Belt town was bustling with industry and promise. Now it was just a skeleton of its former self, its steel girders stained with rust like old blood, its concrete crumbling like forgotten dreams. For Sarah, the bridge wasn't just a crossing, it was a daily reminder of her life's quiet stasis. She worked at the Copper Kettle, a diner that smelled perpetually of stale coffee and burnt toast, and her routine was a comfortingly predictable loop. Her only luxury was this evening walk, a brief escape from the mundane. On her wrist, a simple silver locket, a gift from her late mother, felt like a silent, enduring presence. Her mother had given it to her on her 16th birthday, a day marked by a fierce thunderstorm, and had told her it was a reminder of strength. "You're a rock, Sarah," she'd said. "Don't you ever forget it." Sarah had never felt like a rock. She felt more like a pebble, worn smooth by the relentless current of life. But she wore the locket every day, a small act of honoring a love she missed more than words could say. As the rain began to fall in heavy, deliberate drops, a familiar knot of loneliness tightened in her chest. She saw a young mother with a child hurrying across the bridge. The little girl, a flash of red backpack and bright yellow raincoat, clutched her mother's hand. The mother was on her phone, her face etched with the harried expression of a person stretched too thin. Sarah's heart, a muscle that had learned to beat at a steady, unexcited pace, gave a small, unbidden lurch. She felt a profound empathy for the mother, a silent recognition of a shared struggle. Suddenly, a sound ripped through the air that was more than just the storm's fury. It was a guttural, tearing noise, like the world itself was being ripped apart. A section of the bridge's railing, rusted and weak, snapped and plummeted into the churning, muddy river below. The world descended into chaos. The roar of the collapse was a physical blow, a shockwave that rattled the very ground beneath Sarah's feet. Car horns blared, tires screeched, and a collective scream of terror erupted from the crowd. The mother on the bridge, startled from her phone call, pulled her child close, but it was too late. A massive crack spiderwebbed across the asphalt beneath them. The little girl stumbled, her tiny hand slipping from her mother's. The ground gave way, and the child vanished into the gaping maw of the collapse, her terrified scream swallowed by the roar of the river. Her mother stood frozen, a statue of horror, her face a mask of silent agony. Sarah didn't think. She didn't weigh the danger. She simply ran. The instinct was primal, an old engine starting up in her soul. She vaulted over a flimsy barrier and sprinted onto the bridge, the ground trembling and groaning with every step. The wind howled and the rain lashed her face, but she didn't feel it. All she saw was the little girl, dangling from a twisted piece of rebar, her small body swaying precariously above the churning water. Her red backpack was a beacon of desperation. Sarah's legs burned, her lungs ached, but she pushed harder. She had no grand purpose in life, no heroic destiny. But in that moment, running toward the terrified little girl, she knew her purpose was to reach her. It was a promise to a stranger, a silent vow whispered on the wind, a desperate plea to the crumbling world. Not today. The air was thick with the scent of wet metal, fear, and the raw, unadulterated smell of a world breaking apart. Sarah reached the girl just as another section of the bridge gave way, with a sickening groan. The ground beneath them tilted violently, sending a shower of debris and dust into the abyss. The little girl, no older than 6, was sobbing, her small hands raw from clinging to a twisted wire. Sarah grabbed her, pulling her into a tight embrace, her arms a shield against the chaos. The girl's tiny body was trembling, her cries muffled against Sarah's chest. "It's okay, baby," Sarah said, her voice a low, steady rumble, a stark contrast to her racing heart. "I've got you. We're going to get out of here." Her words were meant for the child, but they were also a desperate prayer. The path behind them was gone, swallowed by a massive chasm. Below, the river was a monstrous, churning thing, filled with twisted metal and splintered wood. Sarah saw a narrow, rusted support beam a few feet away, her only link to solid ground. It was their last hope, a thread of steel against the unraveling world. As she held the girl, her gaze fell upon a small silver locket hanging from the child's neck. It was identical to her own, a delicate silver circle. A sudden, powerful jolt of recognition ran through her. This locket wasn't just a trinket, it was a mirror. It was a promise, a link to another mother, another life. In that instant, her own mother's words echoed in her mind. "You're a rock, Sarah." The meaning of those words changed. It wasn't about being unyielding, it was about being a foundation, a safe place for someone else to land. With a deep, shaky breath, Sarah lifted the girl, holding her close to her chest. The child's little hands, no longer clutching the wire, now gripped Sarah's coat. She felt the girl's silver locket press against her own. This was no longer just a rescue, it was a sacred trust. She looked across the chasm at the hysterical mother, a woman who looked so much like the single, struggling mothers Sarah saw every day. She had to get them both to safety. She had to keep the promise of the locket. She leapt, landing precariously on the narrow beam. The beam groaned under their combined weight, but it held. Inch by agonizing inch, she began to move, the wind and rain lashing at them. The girl's small hand found Sarah's locket, a silent gesture of trust, a small anchor in the storm. The cheers and screams from the other side of the bridge were a distant, surreal noise. Her entire focus was on the beam, on the little girl in her arms, on the rhythm of her own breathing. When they finally reached the solid ground, the relief that washed over the crowd was palpable. The mother rushed to them, tears streaming down her face, a mix of sheer terror and overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you," she sobbed, pulling her daughter into a desperate hug. "Thank you so much. You saved her." Sarah, exhausted and shaking, could only nod. The little girl, her face streaked with tears and rain, looked up at Sarah. "Your necklace is just like mine," she whispered, touching Sarah's locket. It was a simple observation, but in that moment, it was everything. It was a recognition, a bridge built between them in the heart of a disaster. The rescue transformed Sarah from an anonymous diner waitress into a local hero. Her face was on every news channel, a symbol of courage and resilience in a town that desperately needed both. The attention was a jarring, unfamiliar thing. For Sarah, the quiet woman of routine, it felt like an invasion. The true significance of the event, however, wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet moments after the storm. A week later, a woman named Emily walked into the copper kettle. She was the mother from the bridge, her face now etched with exhaustion and profound loss. "I don't know how to thank you," Emily said, her voice raw. "My car was on the bridge. I lost my job. We have nowhere to go." Emily's daughter, Lily, clutched a teddy bear, her small hand fiddling with her silver locket. Sarah, whose own life had been upended by the constant stream of reporters and well-meaning strangers, felt a deep, immediate kinship with Emily. The disaster had connected them in a way that transcended simple heroism. It was a shared trauma, a silent understanding of what it meant to be on the edge. Sarah, a woman with little to give, realized she had something more valuable than money or a spare room. She had a community. She and Emily, bonded by the shared trauma and the matching lockets, began to talk. Sarah told her about the town's decline, about the families who were struggling, about the small pockets of kindness that kept Millhaven from crumbling entirely. She introduced Emily to her friends, a patchwork of resilient souls from the diner and the local laundromat. They organized a fundraiser using the copper kettle as the hub. The town, inspired by Sarah's heroism, rallied. Old-timers donated what little they had, local businesses offered temporary jobs, and neighbors provided Emily and Lily with a place to stay. The silver locket, a mirror image on two different women, became a symbol of a new, unexpected connection. The real change wasn't just in the money raised or the jobs found, it was in the human connection forged in the aftermath of the collapse. Emily, once isolated and overwhelmed, found a new support system. Sarah, who had always seen herself as just an ordinary woman, began to understand the power of her actions. Her simple life wasn't small. It was a foundation upon which a new sense of community could be built. Her mother's locket had been a symbol of a past connection, a reminder of love lost. But Lily's locket, a promise of a new future, represented hope found. The physical bridge was gone, a twisted monument to a tragic day. But the emotional bridge built in its shadow, forged in the fires of kindness and resilience, was stronger than any steel. Sarah, the simple woman from Millhaven, had not only saved a life, she had helped a whole community start to heal, proving that true heroism isn't about a single moment of bravery, but about the lasting impact of a compassionate heart. She had overcome her own quiet isolation by reaching out, and in doing so had created a new, unbreakable connection for herself and everyone around her.